Hey, what's up everybody? Hammerheart Metal Reviews here once again doing another discography countdown. Today we'll be talking about a lesser known Swedish black metal band, Setherial. So these guys, if you've never heard them before, I would definitely recommend them for fans of other bands like Marduk or Dark Funeral, very much in the same vein as that. Like I said, they are from Sweden, so they have that typical Swedish black metal sound. This band was formed in 1993, right in the heyday of the Norwegian black metal scene. So they kind of, when they started out, had a lot of similarity to some of those early Norwegian bands, but putting that Swedish spin on it with a little bit more melody than maybe their Norwegian counterparts. They did put out 6 albums in their career, but they haven't put out anything since 2010. I don't know if they are officially disbanded or over, but they're not really too active at the moment. Their early era, I think, is their best, in my opinion. Later on in their career, they really went kind of a more generic black metal direction, almost like super similar to Dark Funeral's later style. So those ones I'm not as much of a fan of, but you'll see as I get through my list. I'm going to rank them all from my least favorite down to my favorite. Throughout their 6 albums, they did have 3 different vocalists, each of them doing vocals on 2 albums. So I'll name them off as I get to it. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into this. Out of the 6 albums, there's probably only 3 albums that I really go back to often. The other 3, I don't think are up to the same standards as the other ones that I'm going to talk about. Like, there's a clear divide. So yeah, let's get right into this. Coming in at number 6, my least favorite Setherial album is their 4th album from 2003 titled End Time Divine. So the vocalist on this album's name was Wrath. And yeah, like, this album is extremely fast, doesn't really let up at all. It's I don't want to say it's terrible. I am putting it last, but it's just because it's not as interesting as their other albums. They're capable of a whole lot more. Like, this is just pretty standard in-your-face black metal. I really feel like they kind of lost their innovation at this point. There's nothing really original about this. It just sounds like a Dark Funeral clone. And don't get me wrong, I love Dark Funeral. I love a lot of their albums, but at least there's some originality there. By this point, like, this album just didn't really bring anything new to the table, and I find it a little boring and not too exciting. Best songs, if I had to pick some, Crimson Manifestation, Subterranean is pretty good, but all in all, like, I just don't really go back and listen to this album too much because I just find it a bit of a disappointment compared to some of their other releases. Moving it right along, coming in at number 5, I'm going with the album right after that from 2006, their 5th album, Death Triumphant. So this one did bring in a new vocalist named Infaustus. This was his first album. This one has a little bit more variation than End Time Divine, but it's still not really too stand out. Another one that's just kind of a little boring and just very generic. Like, if you asked for just a straight up kind of what you would expect satanic black metal album, well, this is it. Like, it's not bad. The drumming is very fast, but the riffs aren't that interesting. There's still a little bit of melody here and there, but it's just not that standout. Another one that I don't really go back to ever. The title track, Death Triumphant, is alright. Aeons of Bloodlust is pretty good. But all in all, yeah, just not one that really interests me a whole lot. Let's just move this right along. Coming in at number 4 from 2010, their last album, Ekpirosis. So this one, actually, I do find a little bit more engaging and more interesting than the last couple that I talked about. They actually tried to experiment a bit more, and this album is a lot more varied. It's not just one speed the whole time. There's a little bit almost like progression going on. So I applaud them for at least trying something different here. It doesn't always work. It's not on par with their best, but it is still an interesting listen. This one I would go back to listen to. I don't go back to it a ton, to be honest. It's still not something I consider a classic by any means, but it is still a decent album. Best songs on here, A World in Hell, The Devouring Eye is pretty solid. Like, all in all, it's a decent album, but it's not on par with the next 3 that I'm going to talk about. Now we're going to get into the good stuff. It might sound like I'm just hating on Setherial, but don't worry. We're getting to the good stuff now. They do have a handful of albums that I really do enjoy. So let's get into those. Coming in at number 3, I'm going with their 3rd album. This one is from 1999, Hell Eternal. So this one, their original vocalist, Croth, stopped doing vocals. He just went on to play guitar. He didn't leave the band. He's been in the band the whole time, but switched from vocals to guitar. And they brought in a new vocalist named Wrath. So Wrath was the same vocalist that was on my least favorite album, End Time Divine. But here, he sounds pretty good. Even on End Time Divine, he sounds good. That's not the reason the album's not as enjoyable. But here on Hell Eternal, this one is a very solid black metal album. So this one is kind of where they started going in a more generic direction. Definitely not too original. Very dark, funeral inspired. Again, they kind of lost some of the uniqueness that their first album had and that their second album started getting away from. But here they've really kind of lost that. But that being said, this is still very hyperspeed black metal. And it's a very enjoyable album for what it is. Like, maybe it's more straightforward than their first couple albums. Not a ton of variation in the songwriting, but it's still, if you want just some in-your-face aggressive black metal, this album checks all the boxes. It's a very enjoyable listen, very vicious and evil sounding. Best songs on here, Towards Thy Realm is really awesome. The vocals are really aggressive in there. The title track, Hell Eternal, is great as well. Like, all in all, it's a pretty solid album. I don't think it's on par with their first two, but I still go listen to this one every now and then. Now let's move it on to even better stuff. Coming in number 2 is their second album, Lords of the Night Realm. This one is from 1998. So this did feature their original vocalist, Croth, still on vocals. And yeah, this one, it is a little more accessible than their debut. It's a little more straightforward, just satanic black metal. They definitely don't have the same sense of atmosphere that the debut does, which I will talk about later. I guess I've kind of spoiled what number 1's going to be. But this is still just a very solid, harsh, aggressive black metal album. The drumming is absolutely relentless. There's very catchy songs on here too. Satan's Realm is great. The title track, Lords of the Night Realm, is awesome. Just a super fast riff. Lords of the Night Realm. Lords of the Night Realm. It's fucking awesome the way he screams it. Summon the Lord with Horns, another really solid one. Like, all in all, just a very aggressive, enjoyable black metal album. But that just leaves number 1. Maybe it sounds like I haven't been pumping these guys up too much. Well, that's because their other albums are not even close to on par with what I'm putting at number 1. This album is an absolute masterpiece. So even though, as a whole, their discography doesn't really stand up to other black metal bands, this album definitely does, and that is their debut album, Nord, from 1996. If you've never heard Setherial before, please just go listen to Nord. I don't even care if you don't listen to any of their other albums, because this is the masterpiece. They came out of the gates firing on all cylinders. I really wish they would have kept with this style and with this direction, because who knows how many other great albums they could have put out. This one is just fucking awesome. The riffs are great. It's got really epic songs too. There's a couple songs on here that are over 12 minutes long, including the opening song and the Still of a Northern Full Moon. Absolutely awesome opener, one of their best songs for sure. I feel like this album is a little bit underrated. It doesn't get as much appreciation as some other black metal albums from around the same time. This really delivers on a great atmosphere. Like, you want to feel like you're outside in the winter, just icy cold atmosphere. Well, this album captures that perfectly. This was produced by Peter Tagtron from Ekpirosis, of course, a very well-known producer is in the black metal realm with Abyss Studios. Like, this album just perfectly is simultaneously very harsh, but also very melodic. Like, they lost a lot of the melody that's on this album on their subsequent releases, which is really too bad, because they really had a great style here on this album with the icy cold atmosphere, the harsh, aggressive drumming and riffing, but then a great sense of melody. There's even a few acoustic moments here and there as well, but it's still like pummeling blast beats throughout, and it's just a super enjoyable black metal album. I can't recommend this one enough. I already mentioned in the Still of a Northern Full Moon, but my favorite track on the album is actually Morkrit's Tid. Super catchy fucking song, probably one of their most well-known songs. Absolutely awesome. For Dem Mit Blood, another really awesome song. Like, this whole album front to back is all awesome. There's no filler here. This album is all killer. And yeah, like I said, this is easy choice for me at number 1. The other ones, yeah, meh, maybe not so great. Lords of the Night Realm is pretty good. Hell Eternal is decent. The other 3, not so much, not even close to on the same par as Nord. But yeah, if you've never heard these guys before, just at least go check out the debut if you're into black metal, because it's a solid fucking album that more people need to hear. Anyways, these are just my opinions as usual. I'd love to hear yours down below. Do you like their whole discography? What's your favorite Setherial album? Do you love Nord as much as I do, or am I totally off base here? Anyways, just type them down below. I always love to read them. Smash that subscribe button. Give me a like. And until next time, Hammerheart Metal Reviews out.